Yeah, I think that both games really proved to be like it's a semi-final game. You look at the determination from both sides, and I mean South Africa, Nigeria, DR Congo, and then Ivory Coast as well. So it's really proved that, listen, African football, some countries or some teams are declining, but I mean holistically, I think that we are really making progress. And for me, I think that in the final especially, I mean, I think that for so many years, I don't think we've had, I mean, winners, former champions come into play in a space where most of their players are playing competitively. Most of their players seem to be in the peak of their form, especially when it comes to their career, their training. So for me, I think that the semi-final, worth it, and the final, I think that will caps everything. But I think that even though I think I was here on Monday and I was hoping to see South Africa, at the final, but I think that they were just unfortunate. I think Nigeria are too strong this time around, and that's why they were able to make it. So for me, I think that I can't simply wait for the final on Sunday.
Atsu, I think we saw a brilliant game between Nigeria and South Africa. Ultimately, it came down to just the quality of the penalty kicks that.
And before you go on, there was conversation about, Rowan Williams and how he could come to the party.
Yeah.
Stanley Nwabali took his place, and Rowan got the direction of that first penalty.
He did. But again, it reinforces my point, and I've espoused that on this show, that when it comes to penalty shootouts, it is not a lottery. In fact, the science of penalty shootouts favors the takers. And so in any shootouts, the team with the best takers always wins, not necessarily the best goalkeeper, because after the goalkeeper makes the save, still, you would need a player to go out there and then score to drum home the advantage. And unfortunately for South Africa, the same theme that played out against Cape Verde, in the sense that the penalty kicks they took were very poor. Only that Cape Verde were somehow worse than South Africa when it came to the taking of the penalty kicks or the quality of the shots. And so you found a lot of very central kicks that were close enough within proximity to Williams. And so he really didn't have to break sweat to save those. Against Nigeria, you realize that, yes, he got the direction right for a number of those, but the quality of the kicks made it practically impossible. So he guessed right. So he did his research. He saw where Troost-Ekong was likely to hit his penalty shootout because he had seen him take that penalty shootout against Ivory Coast. He had seen Troost-Ekong against Ghana. Similar pattern of where he sends these penalty kicks. But the difference this time was the quality of the kicks that the Nigerians took, Kelechi Iheanacho, and all of those players who took them. And that, for me, is the heartbreaking part of this, because you look at the football that they played over 90 minutes. I thought they looked a bit more brave than even the Nigerians. I thought they would be a bit more pragmatic. I didn't expect them to show that level of adventure, in the sense that in the first half, all the brilliant chances fell to them. Even on the cusp of full time in extra time, we saw that brilliant chance that fell to Mudau. How he failed to score that chance, only he can tell. So the South Africans played well. They exhibited good understanding of the way the Nigerians played. And I'm sure we'll get into the conversation of how they were able to stay in that game for so long. And for those who follow the analysis that we made here, we explained how, although Alex Iwobi was a brilliant player in the build-up phase for the Nigerians, he also, to some extent, was a liability when it came to stopping the opponents and short-circuiting them. So you realize that in the first half, everything the South Africans did, they attempted that space that we spoke about, that half space that he likes to occupy when the Nigerians are defending, and then the space between the left centre-back and the left wing-back, the left centre-back and then the holding midfielder. So yesterday, for some parts of the game, Calvin Bassey looked very uncomfortable, not because he is not a very good defender in that zone, but Zaidi Sanusi is a bit more comfortable defending those areas because that's his bread and butter. That's what he's trained to do, right? So his absence meant that Calvin Bassey now, who looked very competent doing the mop-up and being the extra man for Nigeria on that side of the defense every time Zaidi Sanusi was on the pitch, this time had to be the man to shoulder that responsibility. And what did South Africa do? Calmly knock the ball around him, try to draw some rings. Not always successful, But the few times that they found success, we saw how well, that served them. Unfortunately, Nigeria are such a well-drilled team that they do not allow any kind of momentum. So yes, in the videos that we showed you on Monday and then on Wednesday, you saw that Angola had a bit of joy in 2 or 3 game scenarios of the 90 minutes. Guinea-Bissau had 1 or 2, but that's as far as you can go. As far as when it comes to pointing out the things that make them susceptible to conceding chances in this tournament. And against South Africa yesterday, it was the same. The only difference for me was that, the only issue that I had with South Africa was that they had enough chances. Unlike Cape Verde, who had 1, and unfortunately it came off the upright. Unlike Guinea-Bissau, who had 1, and that goal was flagged off for offside. South Africa had about 2 or 3. And the most heartbreaking of those was the chance that Mudau had in the dying embers of the game. And look, when you work that hard, when you are able to force that space and create that chance, you will expect that you're able to put it away. Because after all is said and done, no matter what you say about Makopa and how profligate he was and how, yes, he occupied spaces, but he really didn't have the quality to threaten the Nigerian defense. The chance South Africa had came at a time when, had they taken it, Nigeria would have had absolutely no response. And somehow they managed to fluff it.
And I think just 2 things for me.
Sure.
I think you look at, on Tuesday when we were here, I just spoke about Nwabali and then Williams. They're playing in the South African PSL. And you look at how professional they've been, how competitive they've been throughout the tournament. And they came face-to-face yesterday. Even though South Africa lost, but you look at how they were eager to make that impression. And so for me, I think that for South Africa, it has been so many years that they've found themselves at where they are. Even though they lose and not being able to play in the final, I think that they will take some bit of consolation from this part. I think massive credit to Hugo Broos that I've been here all the time and I've been praising him all the time. And then the other thing for me has to do with the Ivory Coast side. Emerse, and then the story that he's created for himself. In the midst of the tournament, they thought they're already out. They had to fire the coach. Okay, we're able to make it through because Morocco did us a favor. And look at the story that he's been able to, create for himself. I think that some way, somehow, the manager really in the group phase didn't have the selection right because some of the players that he was choosing or fielding, for me, it was not right because I'm not sure that if you have somebody like Frank Kessié, Sebastian Hala, all these players on the bench. I'm not saying that the players that he was fielding in the group phase game were not good enough, but in tournament like this, you don't gamble. You field your best players, and you know that these are the best players that, for me, when I field them on the pitch, they are going to do the job for me. But I think he did it, but they were not producing the results. And for Emerse, and for how far he's come, I don't know if the Ivorian Federation is going to consider another coach. Because when he was sacked, they were trying to bring in Hervé Renard, but the French Football Federation rejected. But I think how far they've come, playing in the final against, Nigeria. For me, even if he should lose that game, I think the story that he's been able to create for himself and this team, I think that he needs to stay. And I think for me yesterday, I told a friend that, listen, I think Emerse has been able to define the term never give up. Because you look at where they've come in, how they went through, losing to Equatorial Guinea, and look at what happened at the stadium and even outside. So I think that massive credit to them. And I think the players themselves really understood after losing to Equatorial Guinea that, listen, moving forward, we need to take the chances. Just look at the goal that, Sebastian Haller scored. Very difficult from his position, but he was able to do his best to get the ball at the back of the net. And so for me, I think that Emerse Fae has really done a massive job. For South Africa, better luck next time.
We sure are going to be coming back to that subject of, of Côte d'Ivoire making their way into the final. You wanted to make a quick point.
Yeah, I think this is a tournament where the coaches have really left their imprints on the teams. Yeah. And for football fans, that's not always a good thing because in knockout competitions, coaches will favor pragmatism. They'll favor substance over style. And so you'd find that the teams that often play strictly to instructions, you find that the teams are not always expansive. They give very little away in terms of chances and possession. You could say they are risk averse and you'll not be far from right. But also, the football they play very methodical. And I think the biggest example of that is Jose Pizarro. pre-tournament, all the talk was how the team was very imbalanced technically, and that you could not tell what the Nigerian team is fit for, what kind of football that they are good at. All you knew was that they had crazy attacking talent. So Simon Moses, you had Ademola Lookman, and the big man himself, Victor Osimhen, and all of these, Kelechi Iheanacho, and all of these talents. But after the first game, he's taking this team and giving them a semblance of an identity. How has he done that? He has now changed the team to a back three and ensure that there is a bit of solidity in the way the team, they moved forward as a unit. And you'd realize that when they are moving forward, when they're trying to close down spaces, the spaces between the players are very, very small. So 5-7 yards in between. What that means is that it is easier for them to cover for teammates who move out of possession or move out of position, I beg your pardon, and essentially ensure that the shape of the team is not stretched. So one player could get dribbled, but if you go through all the highlights of the matches that Nigeria have played, immediately, one of the things you're going to see is that a teammate either is going to step in with a tackle or get close enough to force the opponent into making a safe pass that is not of any threat or any consequence to the Nigerian defense. Beyond the brilliant coaching that Jose Peseiro has superintended over, he's managed to get his players to apply themselves in a manner that has been brilliant. And so you're seeing players take responsibility in areas that ordinarily other teams won't. And it's not only in the defensive phase, even in the attacking sense, you're seeing players getting into history numbers. So the other time we're talking about Ademola Lookman, who with his 3 goals has become only the 4th Nigerian in the history of the AFCON to score 3 goals or produce 3 goal contributions after Rashid Yekini, JJ Okocha, and then Odion Igalo. Yesterday, with the second penalty, or with the penalty that the big centre-back Troost also scored, he's become the 4th Nigerian player to score 2 penalty shootouts at the AFCON. And you want to talk about a coaching impact, and I feel that the progress of this Nigerian team is one that is down to Peseiro.
Very well.